All right, so I will start again. I'm excited about today and tomorrow. First of all, because we're going to have a lot of exciting talks about AI, architecture, and storytelling techniques. We have guests that are specialized into an AI, virtual reality, augmented reality, and game engines. I was also really excited to have all of you in this room, as we are going to have exciting discussions about these subjects. And hopefully, by the end of today and tomorrow, we can have some conclusions, or at least some interesting things to keep on going for the next month, and then hopefully for the next year when this happens again. So I want to thank you all for being here. Yeah, this is exciting. I cannot say it anymore. I'm really happy that it's happening, that this is happening, and having all of you in this room, all my friends, my colleagues, everyone here, it makes everything like more exciting. All right, so playing models. Hi, I'm Karla. I started I started at the University of Florida last year. And before I start, I want to share a metaphor with you. So more or less we share a common knowledge, common understanding of what I'm going to share with you. So the metaphor that I want to talk about is something that is called, let me see if I can move forward, double articulation. So in the 15th century, there were these two greatest exponents that are called Leonardo Bruni and Fabio Biondo. And they were engaged in this debate whether what languages they should use to communicate literature. So Bruni argued that Latin should be preserved as the main language to write and to write and communicate. But Biondo, on the other hand, said that Italian was the language that it should be used for spreading the writing and reading into literature. But we know that this argument between them led to have Latin as one of the languages that was predominant but Italian. And this is double articulation, is how to use two concepts that are talking about the same subject in two ways that are not different, but are also not so complementary. They are just talking about the same thing. And the interesting thing is that one can replace the other. So this double articulation is about concepts that are talking about one subject and can be used for representing something and for producing something. So our world, it's complex and it's inaccessible. Therefore, it can only be described by abstractions of it. So through history, we have created apparatuses to describe the world, and these are maps and models. So they reveal complexity synthetically, simplistic, and in a partial way. But they also facilitate ways of handling what we have, but we cannot explain. So the definitions of map and models are sometimes confusing because we both use them interchangeably. So therefore for me, I would like to invite you to, for this talk, just forget a little bit of what you think about map and models, and I'm gonna challenge, or I'm gonna introduce you the way I think about them. So maps have been used to abstract and represent the world. In 1931, Alfred Korzybski introduced the notion that the map is not the territory. So for Korzybski, the territory suggests a specific whole, the world, sometimes beyond our reach. According to Korzybski, the ideal map will be a map that contains a map and a map and a map until infinity. For him, a map will never capture the world entirely because it's always an abstraction that fits as one interpretation. From those maps, full of dimensions, observations, and data, models can be projected. So these models are also abundant, but the difference between models and maps is that a model is a personal projection. Models are treated in this presentation as a particular projections of maps. And such reflection fits with the idea that a model is specific, it's drawn, it's projected, and it's a real thing. So let us concentrate on the difference or the characteristics that differentiate maps and models. between one that I consider a purely numerical and another one that is a purely geometrical one. So the numerical, I call it a map, and it abstracts the world with any numerical representation to create categories, relationships. A map resembles the facts of the world without any dimension, with many dimensions and without projecting the data. The geometrical one, I call it a model. It is an abstraction that deals with projections, with perspectives, and it projects by measuring the dimensions of a map into a reduced geometric space. So a model is always a particular projection of the already partial map of reality. So both map and model are in a continuous relationship since one depends on the other. And wherever they are in this quadrupole relationship, that were to exist, they need, where to exist the map and the model, they need kind of a bridge that connects them. So I propose to think that this bridge is a tool and an instrument. And that's how they are communicating between them. So to illustrate this in more detail, the difference between what's a map and a model, let us draw our attention to Geography by Ptolemy. So the first book was dedicated for the tool. So, and this tool was a stereographic projection to create a map of the world. Furthermore, the following books that are just a list of coordinates that can be considered a map. So to be treated, and these coordinates are supposed to be treated with calculus and arithmetic. Ptolemy relies mainly on looking at the stars to create the maps using a triangulation and multiplicity of guides. Such an approach is what I consider a map. So I just zoom in into Ptolemy's last pages of his books, and here, how he collects this data, just this anecdotal. He asks sailors to record their time while sailing, and then he knows how long it took, and then he was able to precisely map each point or each coordinate from the trip they were taking. So he was asking his friends to record their location, and then by time he knew exactly where they were. So this book is the basis for all the other representations that we have from the world. And then I will go to the second example, which is coming from Alberti's, a treatise of mathematical foundations that is called Descriptio Urbis Romae. Alberti uses Ptolemy's tool as an instrument. So an instrument takes distances on the ground and constitutes connections, and then uses geometry to articulate models. So what Alberti presents us with is the use of technology of the time to create an instrument. And if we go back to Ptolemy's example of a map as an abstraction of the world, then every model that comes after that, or that is projected or drawn after those coordinates, we can consider them as a model. And they are specific representations of these maps, and they are personal. So each of these models that you're seeing here, they were drawn by a personal preference or personal perspective of how the world is. So the main difference, because I told you that there is this connection between maps and models. So from a map to a model, you use a tool, and from a model to a map, you use an instrument. So I just want to make clear how I see the difference between a tool and an instrument. So, and the difference lies in the interaction with creativity, or with the user's creativity. So a tool such as lever or a motor, and an instrument such as a typewriter or a computer, can be easily distinguished when observed how they're used, how we use them. The instruments themselves have no particular meaning. They weren't created specifically for one task, but they are only enacted when you use it. So for example, a piece of paper is an instrument such as I can draw, you can draw, but like the way we actually use this piece of paper, it's different from our interaction. A tool differently from that, a tool is actually something that is built for doing something. So a hammer, a machine, they are built to do something. And that's how I think of them, as a different way of differentiating tools and instruments. So to go how they have been used in architecture. If we go back to Vitruvius and his 10 books of architecture, he talks about these architectonic dispositions: iconography, orthography, and scenography. He thinks that these three are what makes the thinking of an architect come true. So iconography is the description and the drawing of a plan. So it allows the understanding of the placement of elements, how the elements are organized, and then how it all works as a whole. To do this, architects should use the compass and the ruler. So here, these are these two tools that they use to actually create this orthography, this floor plan. And that's technology. Well, orthography is the description and the drawing of the elevation to show like the height of the work and the shape of the work. Scenography is a method of drawing the front or the sides removed from the background. So this is how we just set a stage to where the building will lay. And what is understood as perspective is this particular projection of this architectural thinking through the eye of the architect. So this is the model that I'm thinking. So if we abstract the representation, the graphic representation of iconography, orthography, and scenography, we can treat these architectural ideas as abstract concepts that allows us to relate with this idea of maps and models. So iconography uses or emphasizes the use of technology, and we can and will enable this to transform ideas into concrete objects. So then we look at orthography, which is this fertile ground that contains a multiplicity of information, and we have scenography that is the one that allows an architect to unite and then to unite both iconography and orthography through this personal projection. So if we go back to this idea of tools, instruments, maps, and models, we can find this analogy with the three ways of representing by Vitruvius. So iconography can be has a relationship with technology, and therefore this can be the tool. This can be the tool and the instrument, both, how we're translating from maps and models. Orthography can be the maps, so this plentiful, rich list of things that are happening, and scenography, that is the personal projection, will be the models. So if we think how models, map and models of today are, they're diverse, and they're always changing because they are created with artificial intelligence and with big data. So they are always changing, they are fertile, they are big, they are always there, they're messy. Because one map is not enough to describe the world, we are now challenged to have or to produce so many maps, and from those maps we need to produce so many models. So the challenge here is from these ever-changing maps, how can we actually produce models to talk about architecture? I am confident, or I think that these models, as they are personal projections, they need to be very particular to the designer or to the architect that is projecting and drawing them. In order to create a model, I said that we need an instrument. So this instrument is the relationship between a tool and the human creativity. So in this case, what I think of the instrument is always something that needs to involve the human in the decision with whatever tool we're using. So here, if we go back to Jorge Luis Borges, Del rigor de la ciencia, it serves like a good analogy to understand the phenomenon that we're experiencing with this volume and variety of data that we call big data. So Borges' fiction describes an empire that creates a map that has the same size of the world. But it was nevertheless abandoned and forgotten. So Borges warns us that not to confuse the thing with its representation, even if the representation is the same size as the world. So Borges asks, what good is a map of the size of the empire if maps are static and the world continuously flow? So a map always captures one part of reality, and you can have as many maps to describe the world, but you need to be we need to do the next level, which is from those maps ever changing that are capturing a part of the world to create this personal projection of models. And as I said, for me, maps are this collection of data, this collection of numbers, and models are this geometric representation of those numbers that now have a personal, that are loaded with personal preferences. So I can argue that we cannot imagine having only one map of the world. Right? We can have many maps. So from those maps, we should have many models. So today's maps, as I said, they are diverse. They are always changing, and they are created with today's technology, which we can say is artificial intelligence, and with today's resources, which are big data. Because one map is not enough to describe any architectural practices, of course, we need many maps, and that challenges the production of models. So from these new and changing maps, we hope that such models are the result of this personal interaction between an architect's creativity and its exposure to the panorama of available options that are captured through maps. So both abstractions, mapping and modeling, allow us to understand something beyond our reach. And both are different, and both are not right or wrong, both are there. And this is this double articulation that I said at the beginning. Though they are both used to refer to one topic, but they are not canceling each other, they are just there. And we need to embrace the idea that how can we use them to meaningfully create architecture, or like to try to do architecture. So if we go back to this draw or diagram that I showed you before, where I had the model and the map. So now I invite you to think that the model is about information. Then the map is about data. So that's also the difference that I have. So data and information are also different. And then the way we go from one to the other, I invite you to think that the bridge now is a tool, and it's in AI. And the instrument that decodes whatever is happening in the map back to the model, it's AI and human intelligence. So if we go back and think of what are the tools and instruments today, so I think all the tools, they increase human capabilities, and they use artificial intelligence to map a problem into the domain of the models. The instrument uses current technology, of course, as well, in a way that allows artificial and human intelligence to coexist and to have this very intimate relationship, and to articulate models, to produce, to project models. An instrument can model from the domain of the maps and to project these personalized models. So here is just kind of a simplified how I think of them now with these different AI branches or research areas. So for me, and a tool will be supervised learning. So supervised learning uses algorithms for localization and classification, prediction, segmentation of different data modalities, such as sound, image, text. And these tools are used to automatically describe the reality in numbers that are then organized in maps. So current instruments, I propose to think as unsupervised machine learning, unsupervised algorithms for feature extraction and clustering, which are often used in conjunction with humans. So a unsupervised algorithm never gives you the result. It always allows you to look and to find patterns. So this is what I think of it. So an instrument now, this algorithm that is actually letting you look at and make a decision. So it's pointing towards something, and you're the one who is choosing what or where to go. So I will think of an unsupervised, a good example of unsupervised is a search engine. So a search engine actually allows you to query. It brings you different solutions or different results, and then you're the one who chooses what to get, and then you go on the next step. And then here, what is really interesting now to consider is that we have both. But then what matters here is like, what's the question you're asking, so you can actually meaningfully have an answer to that. Now with AI and with big data, any question, you can ask any question, you will have any answer. But what's the question? Like the answer depends on the question and how good the question is and how good the answer is. So with the current abundance of artificial intelligence algorithms and big data, everything becomes available, and therefore it also becomes dissolvable. So hence, as I said, what matters the most is to come up with the quotation right question, or the question that makes sense for what you're doing now. And what I'm going to show you now is some images of what I think of a map. And I created these maps with several different modalities of data. So then now what I'm questioning in this conference is how can we meaningfully create as many of the maps that I'm showing you in models. So this is a map created with social media data, and it's organized by looking at the objects on the images. And here, this map allows us to constrain the space where these thousands of images exist, so we can navigate and find something that is meaningful for us. So this map over here, this map is an organization of the change that happened after a natural disaster. So here it's a result of the difference between pre and post disaster. And in this map, we can know exactly what's the most affected area by just looking at this map. So what do we do with that? This second map is a map that contains literature from academia that is talking about disaster response and humanitarian organization mission statements. So I wanted to create a space where both can live and both can share a common ground. So you can ask a question and see who from academia, who from humanitarian organizations can meaningfully respond to your question. This is a map from 3D detailings from architectural buildings. So here the question, or here what I wanted to at least like have the sense about. So this map is about different detailing in architecture. So what do we do with this? So I wanted, this is like a disrupting image, but I just wanted to talk about what is happening now with AI. Why is this so dangerous to talk about AI now? And it's because of what we're seeing on the screen. So this is type of, it's called, if you search in Twitter, it's called AI art. I mean, all of these images are automatically generated, are automatically, they come by the million. So then there is this one artist, one person who just sits and looks through this million and finds four that are appealing. So AI shouldn't be necessarily used in this way as having the human only as a curator. I think AI has more powerful as to empower us not only for curating data, but to actually meaningful project personal interest or personal intentions. So what I say, and then I will move on, is that so we can take advantage of AI because it actually solves many of the problems that have to do with optimization. With time, it's always fast, it's always precise, and you can really think or consider more things that are valuable in our work that has a lot to do with creativity rather than productivity and machinery computation. So there is also, I wanted to also point out some of the examples that I looked online, well, not online. I know one example that is sitting here, that is there. These are all automatically generated books, and they have been published, and they have an AI as a co-author. So I'm challenging, or I'm invited to discuss here in this conference, how can we actually meaningfully create a project or a model that meaningfully includes AI as a co-author when you're creating something. And then I also have another question for you. If we go back to, well, this is a curve, yes. So data usually, how an automatic algorithm learns, it pulls from the big data, which will be represented by this normally distributed curve, And then it just interpolates, or it takes some of the points that it finds there, and it throws as a result. So let's say this book was found within that curve, right? But then I question as well, like if we are only sampling from this normally distributed data, we're always going to get like the kind of state of the art, or like the common things that are happening. But then, for example, what is happening on the edges, right? Can we meaningfully look there? Can we find an AI that can let us to that edges that maybe are more meaningful and interesting to look at? So to tell a story, these guys told a story about creativity. So this study looked at paintings through the time and created a rating on how creative they were. So, and they consider quantitative measurements. So there was this consider originality, and then compared to previous work. And it also considered how much it influenced future pieces. And it's interesting to see that most of the paintings that were interesting or were rated as creative, they were never in the pool of the things that, or in this normally distributed data that I just showed you. So they were from the edges. And this is the question that I have, like, can we actually use AI to get into the edge and see what is happening there so we can learn? I think AI is really good at giving us an understanding of what is happening so we can go beyond. So we should never stop doing what they're doing, but can we actually go and look at these edges? So why play? So if we want to approximate these tales, we need to do it playfully, and we need to do it all the time, and we need to try out things. So AI, it's very new. Well, very new in the sense of like almost 80 years here, but we don't know exactly how can we or what will be, what it changed. So I invite you all to think of how can we use AI in a playful way. So we just try to create as many models as we can in a way that is not trying to have the right solution, but is just trying to pull and show and expose what we think about models. So I'm gonna quickly browse through some of my playful attempts to use AI into design. So, for example, here is a project that we did with a colleague, Diana Alvarez Marin. So this is a city, we call it City of Indexes. So here we wanted to know how can we navigate a city without ever being there. And we wanted to learn from previous experiences of places we've been to train an AI to suggest where should we go. So this was kind of what Google is doing, that is suggesting you places that you should visit because it learned from what you went before. But here we were trying to be conscious about. Here we were trying to meaningfully train the algorithm in the way that we can only go to these places that we like. So here in the center is a map that is telling you the places that, according to how we train this AI, we don't like, which are in blue, and according to the places we like are in yellow. And then we pull from, because all of this is geolocated, we can pull social media data from those places. So we don't only look at it from street view images or satellite imagery, but we can also visit those places digitally through what people are talking about these places. So there's this other story about how can we tell about a city without actually telling what a building or what a street is. So this project was about schools. So can a neighborhood be, how similar are neighborhoods depending on how the schools are? So here we sampled some schools and we looked at all the amenities that were around, and then each school was characterized by all the amenities around, and then we map them back. So what you're seeing, like this is the clustering of all these schools based on everything that is around. And then what you see on the map are similar schools based on houses, whatever they have around. So it's not about zoning, but it's about understanding the city in a different way. So this experiment can be used not only with schools, but can be used, well, we use it with airports, for example, not in one city, but in the world. How similar are airports depending on all the things that are around, for example. Well, I'm going to show you some. Well, this was a student work from this AI in the built environment. So they wanted to think of architectural elements through these AI generative tools, and then they meaningfully, well, they created a texture or a perspective that used it as a seed, and then the seed actually started morphing into different keywords that they use to create this. So this is playful. Well, this is a project that actually looked at, they had a database of architectural drawings from the first years in the School of Architecture, and they wanted to train a AI algorithm to learn the style. And then then you will see here, so this is the original images that were fed, and then the AI started this was the first train, and then it started actually mimicking everything that we did. So now we can just collage around with AI what they think the first 2 years of architecture drawings look like. Well, so the understanding concepts throughout space and time. So this project was how do we see luxury in the world? And does luxury feels the same here than in Europe, than in Latin America, than in Japan? So this pulling from the web allows us to really not constrain ourselves to space, but to really be playful about everything that is around. But also, like here, can we find a new style? That is, well, this was a project about trying to see what's the difference or what's the similarities between two styles in paintings. And we have one that is more technical, but is also really interesting to talk about. So here, what you're seeing here in the wheel are all the typical adjectives that we use to describe winning projects in architecture competitions. So how we got those words was we parsed a lot of architectural competitions websites, and we only took the jury commentary of winning projects. So we had about, let's say, 3,000 jury commentary of winning projects, and we parse those texts, and we only select the adjectives that were used. So then after getting this list of adjectives, we try to create a database that actually matches those adjectives with a structural or with an architectural form. And this will allow us to then in the future train an algorithm that will have as an input a text that is containing any description of what you want, and it will output a three-dimensional structurally sound form. And this is playful in the sense that it will feedback loop everything, like your discourse is changing while you're looking at the output. And this discourse can change until you're feeling that this is more or less what you're looking for. So all of these are stories, and all of these are playful attempts. They are not, I won't claim ever that they are correct. I will only claim that they are playful, and they are looking at things in ways that how can we use AI to really change the way we're currently working. So what I'm going to show you now is just a glimpse of what you're going to see at the end of today in the gallery exhibit, what the students at Playing Models workshop did or got engaged with. So they work with maps, and they were asked to create models. So maps were we use data from, we use images, we use text, we use 3D models through maps, and then they were asked to create models. So how we started how we started this whole project was by defining keywords, defining these concepts that are really important for them. So they want to convey these into an architectural project. So those keywords, they were very particular to their wanting or their willing. And then we use those keywords to parse the web. So we parse social media with those keywords and many other keywords that are synonyms or that are related to their intentions. And then we started creating maps. So these maps are maps from social media posts, text posts. And what they are organizing here, they chose to organize it by either semantic, by looking at the content of the text, or by looking at whether it's a positive or negative or neutral text. But they do not only stay in these maps with text, they also created maps with images. And these images are from the same social media post, but now we're looking differently. So we're looking at them by either the color of the images, by the edges of the images, by the objects within the images, by the structure of the image. So our students were able to actually meaningfully choose how to look at this data. So as important as what the data is as well how we look at it. And there must be many ways of looking at the data, as there must be many maps that we can create. So yeah, it depends on how you look at it and how it renders. So then after, of course, having those maps, we need to be specific. So we invite them to start selecting the cells that are meaningful for them to actually continue, that makes sense to the keywords that they choose at the beginning. And then the selection led into creating what we call an atmospheric image. So this is just the first step to understand space. So these images are spaceless, but they have an appealing or an atmospheric sensation, what exactly we want to have here. So then we went back to the pool of data, but this time the data that we're using are this 40 canonical architecture. And this canonical architecture students, the database is coming from Lisu's course, the digital, I think it's called the digital
Intro to Digital Architecture.
Yes. So here the students needed to 3D model all of these projects. And this 3D model allowed them to not only look at understand the building that they were 3D modeling, but also see what are the details or the decisions that they made while modeling the project. So what we did here from this 40 canonical architecture, we then partitioned them in 8 by 8 in small detailings that then later got arranged into maps. And here are all the maps that are coming from this pool of data. And what we're looking at here are all these detailings from this canonical architecture that can later help us understand, or at least be playful with the idea of how can we actually create architecture through detailing. And then after they have these maps, they started making the selection process where they had these small models and they start thinking how they can arrange them, how can they actually make them, put them in the ground and think of them as these objects that can be playfully managed with. So then we're in the surprise, I just have a mirror board picture of all their work. They are really hard workers and they work day and night. So I'm really excited, and I really invite you by the end of the day to go and check their work. And then since it's not a formal crit, it's more playful. It's about just talking about these things without trying to say whether it's wrong or right. It's more about thinking and then seeing, how can we go from here? So yes, so playing models. So playing models has, I try to just at the beginning try to say why we decided on playing models, because we are sure that now we have we can create maps, but how can we be playful with models? So I invite all the speakers to think of these ideas of how can we actually think of AI, VR, augmented reality, game engines to be playful. So with that, I will finish and thank you. All right.
You want to take any questions?
I want to take all the questions.